And this man currently has over $1/3 of $1 trillion in cash.
With a T, not a B, a T.
Correct, which I believe to be more cash than any one individual has ever had control of in human history. He's going to retake the top spot. Hi, I'm Dan Bradbury.
And I'm Topher Morrison.
Welcome to the Dan Bradbury Podcast.
My friend, good to see you again. Before we get started, I want to let you know I have almost finished 2 of the books that you recommended from previous podcasts. So when we get to the book of the week, I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback on these books. So get ready to defend your position, my friend. And then I think we should probably also address the elephant in the room, which is you got some feedback about our podcast.
Well, for the record, it's my podcast, and there's my name on it, nice try. And secondly, it wasn't so much feedback about the podcast as it was feedback about you, about you whittering on about your health complaints.
On this one, you're not going to sink me on this one. It was about both of us, not just me. Both of us.
Well, ironically, we're now doing the very thing they said. So a very good, a long-standing client of mine said, Dan, I was listening to the podcast in the gym. I love it, but I was 25 minutes in on the treadmill. And I think his words were that damn American was whittering on about his tongue. That's not what you said in the pre-show warm-up here. That's not what you said. You just said that it was 25 minutes before we got to content because you and I are taking the piss out of each other too much. Well, there may or may not be a little bit of poetic license, but it's my podcast. So he basically said that damn American was whittering on, and I was just waiting for you to talk and get to strategy. So
that's exactly what he said, I'm sure. All right, so here's the deal. If you've been listening or watching this podcast since I've become a guest, and yes, I will be the one to admit we do sometimes get a bit distracted. Do you like it or not? Let us know. Send us an email. Give us a call. Send us some feedback. Post a comment in the post. Let us know. Do you like it when Dan and I are ripping on each other, or should we just get straight down to the content? And until
we
then,
need to get to it, Topher.
Yes.
My vote is to get to it, because if we get distracted by your shitty dress sense, I mean, look at that tweed jacket. Oh my word!
Dude.
What's going on here? We've got too much good stuff in this week's show.
Okay, so literally, you just said that you're ripping on me because of us getting off on a tangent, and then you just start ripping on me about my outfit.
Yeah, it's different. It's like my points are valid. Yours are erroneous and excessive.
All right, fair enough. Because why? Because it's your podcast. All right, let's get into the news of the week, my friend.
All right, news of the week. This week is our billionaires who raked it in October. So yes. I absolutely love this story. I mean,
the only reason you love this story is because your favorite guy in the world is number 2.
Yeah, right. So specifically, the story is on Forbes, and it's all about the billionaires who saw the biggest gains in October, who've made the biggest gains in wealth. And even though en masse, because the stock market's down, because most of the richest people in the world's money's tied up in stock of their companies, there's some big winners and big losers. And number 2 on the list was Mr. Warren Buffett, whose net worth increased by $8.9 billion in a single month.
In 1 month. Wait a minute. I'm going to do the math on this real quick. What would that be? If that's 8.9 billion, does my calculator, I think I have to turn my calculator horizontally for that, by the way. That's 890 million. That's not enough. I literally have to turn my phone sideways.
It's 300 million a day, Topher. I'll do
I want to get his hourly rate. Okay. 890. No, it's 8.9 billion. Is that what you said?
Yeah, 8.9 billion.
I've got too many digits now. You know what? This will take forever. Let's move on. Anyway, yes, your favorite guy, Warren Buffett, hit the second spot. By the way, remember a few podcasts ago, I predicted that Warren Buffett is going to reclaim his spot as the wealthiest man on the planet. And I believe that this report shows that he is taking his steps toward that throne.
Yeah, look, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But the fact is, in times of recession, people with cash do better. And Berkshire Hathaway is always done better historically during times of recession. And it lags the S&P during boom times because he's a conservative investor. But at the start of the year, Topher, he had over $300 billion in cash. So that's over a third or almost a third of $1 trillion in cash. So
that's insane.
Correct. I mean, it was revealed in the Berkshire Hathaway annual report. He made some big stock purchases earlier in the year, which are probably not doing that great, but he still had unbelievable reserves. His biggest gain his biggest gain in his history, I think, in absolute terms, not in percentage terms, was in the 08-09 kind of global financial crisis. So we're heading there again, but he's got a hell of a lot more money this time around.
All right, so let's bring that down to reality to small business owners who'll be listening to this podcast or watching it. What does that mean? It means covet your cash, right? You've got during times of recession, people with the cash do better, right? So let me ask you this then: would you think, does that mean you should start selling off assets to get cash, or does that mean you just shouldn't be investing in assets? What do you think?
Yeah,
keep in mind, neither one of us are financial
I'll try and do it super condensed. My personal opinion, and some of my private clients who've got big cash reserves, is it's only just starting, right? IMF or whoever, or Bank of England saying the UK just starting a 2-year recession, right? Longest in history. Okay, I was looking at a few company purchases I'm considering. I spoke to a very wise, savvy investor who just looked to me and went, Dan, tell me, do you think there's going to be more deals or less deals in 6 months' time? And I went, well,
way
more, definitely. And he went, great. He goes, so I was kind of on the edge of these two particular company investing in, but it wasn't obvious. It wasn't obvious whether I should or shouldn't. And as soon as he zoomed me out to that principle. It's like, yeah, look, entrepreneurs, typically we jump the gun. So I'm not about trying to time the market, because I'm sure Buffett would be frowning upon me saying that. And what the Buffettism would be like, you can have as many pitches as you want. Like, you don't get struck out. So sit and wait for the fat pitch. And we've only just started. There's going to be plenty of fat pitches, easy balls to knock out the park. So I am personally just being patient. I'm exploring and waiting for the right opportunity, the easy pitch to knock out the park.
Okay. By the way, speaking of billionaires, and speaking of acquiring companies on the cheap, there might be one that you could get that was worth about $15 billion a couple of weeks ago, and it's worth a lot less now. Let's talk about our fail of the week.
Our fail of the week this week is the FTX crypto exchange, and specifically Sam Bankman-Fried, who it's been brewing for a while, and obviously we've had the kind of crypto winter and crypto crash. But here was the thing in this article. So we're recording this on a Friday, Topher, and for those listening, as of Tuesday this week, Sam Bankman-Fried was worth over $15 billion, and he's just filed bankruptcy. So $15 billion to zero in 3 days. 4 days.
That's great. And by the way, what's interesting, that those who are watching the podcast or listening may also not know. Every week we're always in touch with one another, sending each other stories on what could be on the podcast. And you literally sent me a link maybe 5-6 days ago about this guy, where it was about, there's this massive shakeup, it's really unstable. And then when you sent me the same link today, and I saw his same face, I'm like, dude, you've already sent me this one, and you're like, nope. Now it's tanked. So they were projecting that it might go bad, and apparently now it has gone bad.
Well, and here's the point for the small business owners, right? I think, how many times do you need to see about people being rich on paper, right? Or you could say about being rich on paper versus being cash rich. Or you
Yep.
could say about, okay, I'm not interested in being rich for a day, a week, or a month on paper.
Yeah.
I'm interested in robustness, and therefore it gets built more slowly and robustly over time. I mean, yeah, would it have killed him if he'd been a bit more conservative and his net worth had only been a tenth of what it was because he did it more
Right.
gradually, but it was
Yep.
pervasive for the rest of his life rather than
he was clearly over leveraged.
he's a pariah.
You know what's interesting about this? Being a crypto coin. If I'm not mistaken, and I often am, and I don't know what I'm doing often, but I do know that I do being wrong really, really good. When cryptocurrency came out, one of the big selling features about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general was that it was going to be recession proof, that it was going to be unaffected by the markets because it's its own market. And I think we're starting to realize, I think like the curtains being pulled back now, and all of a sudden we're realizing maybe it's not as invincible as we thought it was. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're going to get hate mail for this, Topher, and unusually, you and I are on a similar vein of this, and it may be reflective of us aging ungracefully. But look, it's not a storeholder of wealth; it's volatile. I mean, probably for me, the simple analogy would be like early internet, because people go, "Oh yeah, cryptocurrency is going to change the world," and my personal opinion is absolutely, global finance is changing and will be changed forever, and a bit like the internet companies in the early to mid 90s. If you bought a basket of every internet company out there and you'd spent, bought a portfolio, it would have been exceptionally volatile. And for every Google or Amazon or, whatever the early purchases were, you would have had a Friends Reunited, or I can't even remember all the ones that have gone now, AOL Online, like that kind of stuff. So on balance, you probably did great if you invested in the internet early. I'm sure you did. And it's probably going to be the true with crypto, but it's gambling. I can't see, unless you're really, really clued up, unless you're really dialed in, it's gambling, right?
I think even if you are clued in, it's still gambling. It's just you've got a lot more
correct
hindsight bias, confirming your decisions. Yeah.
If the head of one of the biggest cryptocurrency exchanges has just gone bankrupt, right? And how many stories do you need to hear of people losing billions in crypto?
Or even worse, they just lose their password. They can't access it. How many stories have you heard of people like that, right? They're like, "Oh, I've got all this money, I can't access it now because it's locked."
But at least it's secure. At least it's secure and secure and private. It's so secure I can't access it myself. Yeah. Anyway, all right. I think we've done this one to death. The point being,
yes, we've beat him down. Poor guy.
Beware of ego.
Yes,
beware of ego. It's not your friend.
Let's talk about the opposite of that, because there's a guy that you had an opportunity to sit down with a few weeks ago who, if ever there was a CEO who, like, hand to my heart, this guy has little to no, I guess every CEO probably has some, right? But this guy, little to no ego, like genuinely golden guy, great heart, grounded, conservative as well. Mr. Clate Mask from the CRM juggernaut Keap, formerly known as Infusionsoft, who is our hero of the week.
So the reason why Clate, absolute hero, I love this interview because he was so candid. Because the theme this week, Topher, we're talking about people, and Clate is an absolute master of nurturing people. You only have to look around the Keap ecosystem, and so many former Keap employees have spun off into very highly successful businesses. It's amazing. And he speaks, frankly, in the interview about a few things. He speaks about the developing. Like, if you wanted to build a great business, you need to develop people. He speaks about the connections of that with family, which I love, because he's got 6 kids. He's got 6 kids, and he is just an epic father and leader, in my opinion. And the third thing, I can't remember because my 8-year-old daughter just walked into the studio and completely interrupted my pattern. India.
I thought I heard something in the background. I'm like, oh, I think hey, how you doing, India? Let me ask you a
you're
question.
in my ear, so she can't hear you.
Oh, she can't hear it. Well, I'll let you translate. Ask her if she thinks that we should spend more time joking around and me making fun of her daddy.
Tova asking if you think on the podcast should we spend more time joking around and Topher making fun of me.
Yep, there we go. So now it is even.
That's not helpful.
Yep. So we've got one pro, one nay. I think we need to get our listeners and viewers to check in.
When will you be finished?
I need about 20 minutes.
I want to go and get my iPod.
I can't help you. Well, I can help you, but it'll be in 20 minutes.
Can I go on your iPad for 20 minutes?
Yes, you can go on my iPad for 20 minutes. Do you want the pen?
Yes, please.
You know, honestly, I thought there was nothing more adorable than my dog interrupting us on this podcast. I think your daughter has just dethroned my puppy.
Well, she closed the door, please, India. And by that, she just ignores me and go back in. So the thing about my daughter, Topher, is she's cute. So this daughter, my youngest daughter, she is very cute and she knows it. So she definitely rules the family, hands down.
Yeah.
And the way I describe it is my eldest daughter, when she's currently 13, when she brings her first boyfriend home, I'll be super protective. I'll start, showing the boy my gun collection and knife collection, etc.
You don't have, yes,
yeah, correct. But he doesn't need to know that. But when India brings her first boyfriend home, I will just laugh and go, "Good luck, buddy. good luck." So that's
awesome.
That's the summary.
All
so
right, well,
what was
right
I? So,
before that adorable interruption, we were just going to get into the interview with Clate Mask.
Yeah. So 1, 2, 3. If it edits in, if not, that's okay. So number one was if you want to develop a business, you need to develop people. But he tied that beautifully to parenting. Yeah. So I'm a father of 3. So everybody out there that's got parents, I love that. And the third thing is he spoke more frankly about some of the significant challenges they did, because they raised over $130 million of VC financing from Goldman Sachs and Bank Capital, etc. And it was really hurt. It got really hurt by, there was some significant fallout and consequences. And so for anybody that's looking to play in the big leagues, I just love that he was humble and transparent and willing to share all that. So it's a great interview.
All right, well, let's check it out.
Okay, hey guys, today I'm very, very excited to be joined by Mr. Clate Mask. Clate is a well-known visionary entrepreneur, and he's the co-founder and CEO of Keap, which makes small business sales and marketing automation software. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know I've got a long-standing relationship with Keap, having been a customer of theirs for a good 15 years now. And just to give you, in case you've been hiding under a rock and you're not aware of Keap and what they do in sales and marketing automation, here's some numbers that I think you'll find interesting. Last year, Keap sent over 28.5 billion with a B emails for its clients, and they processed over $2.63 billion in payments. And if you look at those stats, they're helpfully published on Keap.com. That's Keap, Keap.com. You'll see how some of those things are trending upwards year over year. But this is not a company without its ups and downs over the years. So I'm looking forward to understanding a little bit about Clate's evolution. So Clate, my friend, good to see you again.
Great to be here, Dan. Thanks for having me.
So Clate, I mean, I want to talk about your evolution, and I'm going to almost try and do it in 3 little segments. I want to talk about the startup phase, but I don't want to spend too long on that because most of our listeners are already established. I want to talk about the rapid growth phase and some of the raising of funding, and then I want to talk about kind of the later stages once you had a board of directors. Where some of our listeners might be aspiring to, but right off the bat, Clay, the question I want to ask you is: you have a large family. Is it 6 children you have?
6 kids. That's right.
6 children. So I know a lot of our listeners are parents. So unusual place to start, but how has being a parent changed you? I mean, as a man, but as an entrepreneur, how has becoming a parent change your view of entrepreneurship? I know for me, with my when my wife was expecting our first child, I was really afraid it was going to take away my edge. I wasn't going to be, need to be committed over here, and it was going to take away my entrepreneurial edge. What's your take on how does parenting affect you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, great question. I've got 6 kids. Oldest is 28, youngest is 13. I've been running the business for 20 years or so. So for most of my kids' lives, I've been running Keap, formerly Infusionsoft, and for me, they go hand in hand. I never felt like I might lose my edge, but I did feel like my business or my family would suffer at times if I wasn't very intentional about the way I run the business. So what I would say is it's affected me as a parent, first in the sense that I'm driven to provide and create great opportunities for them and have the business be successful so that we can do all the things we want to do. That early on, that was probably the biggest drive is when you're struggling in entrepreneurship and you're not putting food on the table and things are really tough financially, man, that's hard as a parent. It's really hard. But it just drove me to, burn the midnight oil, figure out whatever I had to figure out. And so on one hand, without my kids, I don't know if I would have pushed through all of the hard challenges. And, probably would have been easier for me to say, you know what, this is just too tough. Let me go find a different job. Let me go do something else. And so I thank my kids for being a great motivation.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm curious, I'm coming from personal experience here from last night, Clay. Last night was one of the rougher nights of my life. I was
I'm sorry.
I was in the emergency room till the early hours of the morning. Multi-hour stay, and with a couple of family members. I'll avoid the details. Everybody's okay, but it was it was somewhat fraught. So I'm definitely running on fumes a little bit today. Today.
Yes, yeah.
Were there any times that you can think of where you felt an inflection point or a decision needed to be made? Like, was there ever a big conference or investor meeting or big decision that coincided with a high school graduation or a child being sick? And I'm curious, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I'll answer. I'm going to answer that question in 2 ways. The first way is I can see something very clear very early on in our business when we were struggling like crazy, where my wife and I have a lot of faith, and for us prayer is a very important thing, and one of the reasons I love entrepreneurship is it really pushes you to be your best and to rely on faith. And we got to a point where things were so hard in the business. We were struggling like crazy. We'd been at it for a couple of years, and we just weren't making any money. We weren't making the kind of progress we wanted to, and it was easy. It would have been easy at that point to quit. And I remember having a very distinct impression that I should involve my kids in the struggle, and we did that. We talked to them about it. We talked to them about how real and hard and challenging it was. And they would hear us pray for the business and for our customers and for our partners and success. And, Dad's going to be speaking at this conference and we need to be able to make sales, so much so that there was one time where we were having great financial struggles and creditors were, after us. We were really on the verge of bankruptcy. And personally. It was rough time. This was probably 2 years into the business, and my one night, it was a Sunday night, and the phone rang, and I went to go pick it up, and it was a creditor that was asking when I was going to pay a bill. And of course I had no money, and I kind of was trying to put them off. It was Sunday night at like 8:30. We were putting our kids to bed, and the person on the other side was very belligerent as they were pushing hard for collection. And I got agitated and got a little upset. And when I hung up the phone, I came back over to where Sharice and the kids were, and they'd all heard it. They heard the conversation, and Sharice knew what it was, and she said, what do they want? And I said, no, I wanted to know why I haven't paid the bill. And my 9-year-old son, just like super quick, did you tell me it's because you haven't made enough sales, Dad? so they definitely got into the mix and learned at an early age that, if you don't sell, you can't pay your bills. And so I just think about that, when you ask the question, do I see an inflection point? I do. I actually see that things started to change when we got our kids involved in the business in terms of what we were doing, the struggles, the challenges. And, kids say some amazing things sometimes when they, they kind of see the world in a certain way. And I can tell you that my kids got through to me on certain things like that, just kind of a very direct, straight, oh, yeah, that's the issue. You're right, bud. So that's one answer. I'll pause there, then I'll give you a more practical answer of times where, there's demands on your time, and how do you balance it all?
Yeah, no, I really like that. I mean, I suppose another question related to that early phase, Clate, for me is, some people are entrepreneurs through and through. Some people have a career and then transfer to entrepreneurship. And if I'm right, I mean, don't believe everything. I got this online, so don't believe everything you read on the internet. You had a career, and the company you were working for, I believe, was sold. And then shortly thereafter, that's when you decided. But what was the inspiration? Was it desperation, i.e., oh, what am I going to do? Or I would imagine, given your background and your career and your degrees and stuff, that your MBA, that there were career options. So what made you crazy enough to take the entrepreneurial journey?
Well, in short, 9/11. So after graduate school, I was working for a software company and loving it, but then that software company sold, and then we went through a second sale. And when you go through, a merger 2 times, everything changes. Even one time, a lot changes, but after 2 times, things had really changed. So I found myself starting to look around for different options, and that was right when 9/11 happened, and then the world just sort of froze and the options dried up. And so I began to look at, I had always wanted to do entrepreneurship, but I thought I'll do that after I've made some money in corporate America and paid off my student loans. And instead, what happened was my brothers-in-law had started this business, and they were asking me for advice all the time. We were talking about the business, and I was just like, maybe joining that, and they wanted me to join them. And I was like, well, maybe joining them would be a faster path to paying off my student debt. And since the world had kind of changed in a dramatic way, that's what caused me to do it. It was probably a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of desperation, and a right opportunity to work with a couple of really, really smart guys, and the rest is history.
I love it. And so fast forward a little bit, because obviously there was plenty of early struggles, but as you started to grow, I mean, there's a variety of things, right? I mean, when we spoke previously to our mastermind group, we spoke a little bit about how the company over multiple years raised over $100 million in financing from investors. But
right.
What was the point when you realized that actually this thing has got legs now? Tell us a story. I'll take us to a moment in time. When did you kind of go, whoa, this is actually becoming a real thing? When did you get beyond the scarcity of we're just surviving to going, you know what, this thing really could go places?
Yeah, it took us about 3 years to get to where, hey, we're going to survive. but up until that point, every day was a fight for survival. We were transitioning from a service business to a product business, from a product business to a online SaaS subscription business. And when you go through that transition, there's just so much you're dealing with. And so it took about 3 years. And then for a couple of years after that, it was like, hey, this is a nice, solid, small business that's producing income for us, and, better income than what our job would be if we, and so it felt really good. But about 5 years in, we started to realize there was an opportunity to do something much bigger. And in order to do that, in order to go after that big vision, we would need to raise capital, and we would need to get serious about not just having a nice little family business, but really building something that could impact entrepreneurs all over the world. And so the short answer is about 5 years in is when we started to catch that vision.
I love it. I mean, so many questions, Kai. I want to talk about revenue, but it is in this phase, I suppose, a commonality that I see. I don't know if it was the same with you. So let me ask, is that when there is that significant growth in revenue, typically there's a growth in headcount, right? You go from a handful of people that could all share a pizza to obviously in your case, hundreds and hundreds of employees.
Right.
And there's growth of revenue. There's necessarily a growth in headcount, number of employees or team members. There's often a growth in office space. I remember some of your office space and how it's grown and expanded, and you've got a football field now. But often with that is also a growth in pain, right? Because the problems are more significant. So what are some of the things that stood out when you're in that? Perhaps it was when the first rounds, when you raised capital, that caused that most rapid growth in terms of percentage terms. What are some of your memories of the challenges of those times, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, you're right. We went through a period of hyper growth where we raised a lot of capital, and we didn't operate the business profitably, because that's not what happens when you raise outside capital. In software, they just want you to grow. And I can look back and say there were a lot of fun things about that, a lot of nice things about that, but there were also some problems with that. And so we grew a lot. We added hundreds of employees. We created the market of marketing automation software for entrepreneurs. We had investors, and you start to have a lot of administrative things you have to deal with, and a lot of other things that take you away from just the joy of serving customers. And so for a decade or so, we ran the business that way. And to be honest, while there were a lot of fun things about it, it also was not my preferred way of running the business. And it takes experience to actually look at it and see it and understand it. But now I have with hindsight, I love the way we run the business today so much more, where we focus on our customers more. It's more about customer success than it is about just getting the next customer. It's about helping our customers and changing their lives with automation, which has always been the inspiration for us. We know how hard entrepreneurship is. And when you use automation to follow up automatically, effectively in the background with your prospects, your customers, your lifelong clients, it is a complete game changer. And most people, even still today, don't realize that. They haven't discovered the thrill of, oh my gosh, I don't have to do this all myself, and I don't have to pay someone to do this. I can just have this done, and it's I set it up, and it's happening in the background, driving sales and freeing me up to do other things in the business. So that's our passion. That always has been the passion. But I would say that in all that fun and hyper growth, I think there was a little bit of that got lost, a little bit of that joy and the focus on just changing the lives of our customers. And it feels awesome to be back to that, and to operate the business profitably, to have a focus on customer success, and just doing what we love to do for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, for those listening, it's well worth checking out the culture page. Excuse me, the culture page on the Keap website. I mean, I love it. The purpose, mission, and values. And I know, Clay, we talk about it a lot with our mastermind members, and obviously inspired by some of Jim Collins' work as well. But I learned it from the Elite Forum, which I got via Keap. And so the purpose to help small business succeed, and the mission of simplifying growth for millions of business. But I've got two directions I want to go. I'll choose one, and then we'll pick up the other one. I suppose just to cover bases, because it astonishes me that so many business owners sometimes don't get this or still miss it. Let's just cover off the base of why follow-up is so important, right? It feels so trite and cliche because you and I speak about it so much. I expect you a lot more than I. But could you elaborate? Why is it? Why are so many business owners inadvertently hurting themselves and hindering their growth and making life very painful for themselves by not? And what do they by not following up? And what can they do?
Simply put, I say all the time, the fortune's in the follow-up. And well, here's what I mean. Most people, on average, people buy after hearing the message 7 times. And most entrepreneurs follow up once or twice.
Right.
And what happens is we think, oh, we're bothering people. We don't want to be a pest. I already said it. They already heard me. No, they didn't. You're not bothering them. You're doing yourself a massive disservice by not getting the message to them at least 7 times. And so, but we can't, but people have these mental, entrepreneurs have mental blocks on why they don't follow up. But what I've found is the biggest thing is they don't have the time to do it. They don't have a system for how to keep track of it all and how to manage it all. And they don't really know, there's kind of a knowledge gap there. Like I said, part of that knowledge gap is, I think I've already sent it. Another part of the knowledge gap is I don't know exactly what to say or what to do. I'm not a marketer. I'm not a copywriter, fill in the blank. But for those reasons, time, system, and knowledge, you end up following up once or twice instead of 7 times. And therefore you leave 3 times the sales on the table. And that's just the math of what it is. And we see all the time when our customers follow up effectively, they literally have 3 times the business opportunities in front of them.
I do love it. I mean, I've often said, Clate, that Keap is the best employee you'll ever have. Works for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and never takes a day off sick, right? And also doesn't make mistakes the way that human beings we've got a tendency to make mistakes. I think a question I wanted to ask you in that to loop back to something you said earlier. You were talking about creating the market. I mean, it's so easy to forget. I mean, I remember when I first heard of Infusionsoft, as it was known then, via Dan Kennedy, and it just blew my mind. And yet now it's such a, in relative terms, well-developed marketplace. And from your ecosystem, there have been so many companies that have flourished and grown big. But how do you deal with the competition? Because I know, for example, at an event of mine several years ago that Keap sponsored, we actually had back then a little known guy who just started a small software company called ClickFunnels, and yet Russell Brunson's blossomed massively, and this company's had rapid growth. Kind of what's your view about in effect you could say that you paved the way for many companies that then start nipping at your heels? Well, how do you view competitors in the marketplace?
We knew when we started that we would create a market, and we were very clear about that. And we said, look, there's going to be lots of competitors doing this. Our view is we focus on what we do. We are advanced automation. We're serious automation for serious entrepreneurs. We're not about, hey, just put this funnel in place. As you know, it's your CRM platform, but then it's all of the automation, workflow automations. It's automating your business. And that's a different thing than just, hey, let's put this funnel out there. So to me, I love seeing the whole market rise. A rising tide lifts all boats, and I get that. And we just stay focused on what we do and who we serve. And I'll be honest, there was a period of time where we kind of lost that focus and we got off track. But that's changed. And truthfully, there's a period of time for about 3 years there where I wasn't at the helm. And that's a whole separate podcast for a different conversation for another day. But we're back to our focus of what we do and have been now for a while. And so Jim Collins talks about it as the hedgehog concept. You know who you are, what you do, how who you do it for. That's one part of the conversation when it comes to competitors. Another part of the conversation, rising tide lifts all boats. Another part of the conversation is a really big market with lots of opportunity. And as I said, we started this and knew we'd create a big market, and that's great. I've never been the kind of competitor that says, we have to go crush everybody else in order for us to win. That's just not the case. There's, I'm an abundant thinker, and the way that I see the world, and we have competitors who look at it a little bit differently, and that's fine. For me, we know who we serve. We know that we're serious automation for serious entrepreneurs. Take a lot of our competitors, our customers will use them for a piece, and then they use us for their back end to automate everything. And that's true of ClickFunnels, and it's true of lots of others out there.
Yeah, I want to loop back in a second to talking about the vision and keeping it fresh and seeing the future. But I also want to dive to the degree that you're happy, Clate, a little bit into. I was going to say the dark side for growth. That's misleading. What I'm going to talk about is the conflicts that occur or the challenges that occur, because when you raise significant outside capital, you have investors, so you have owners in the company now that you've got a fiduciary responsibility towards.
Right.
And of course, they don't always agree with you. They don't always agree with strategy. So for anybody that's listening to this, I was talking to one of our members this week that had raised one round and they not got the growth. And so the original group of investors, the original angel group, declined to do another round. For those listening, this was a SaaS company, but this isn't about SaaS. This is going to apply to any company trying to raise growth capital. So we were having a conversation about how they might about going and doing that raise. But my question for you is, what questions would you suggest a business owner ask themselves? What are the upsides and the downsides around raising capital?
Yeah. Boy, there's a lot to say on this. Let me say the most important thing right at the beginning so that people don't miss this message. If you're going to raise capital from outside investors, there's two very critical things that you must do. Number one, you have to have a clear path to the exit out, the exit that the investor is after. Because at the end of the day, the investor, they might like your business, they might like you. What they are there for is a return. And you have to know that, and they have to know that, and you have to be clear on when that return is and how much it is. Now, your investor will get very vague and fuzzy because they want to have the most opportunity. But you need to be very clear. I'm planning on delivering for you a 3x return in 5 years or whatever that is, but you got to be clear with them so that their expectations are set from the beginning. That's the first thing you have to do. If you get into a fuzzy relationship of, hey, it's going to be problematic. The second thing that you must do, and this is where we get into trouble as entrepreneurs. You have to manage the expectations that will then meet up to that investor's return profile. And this is what it looks like. They will always push you for more growth. If you give into that, the pressure will be there to where it'll be difficult to deliver those numbers at some point. And when you don't deliver the numbers, you lose control. And this comes from someone with experience on this. as I said, we didn't define well enough the timeline of when investors would get their return, and therefore it got fuzzy along the way of how much growth we needed to have. And I didn't understand that as they pushed for higher growth, I felt like I couldn't back down to that. And later I learned I absolutely could have. I could have said, no, the growth's only going to be 20% or 25% or whatever. We're not going to do 45% this year or 50% this year or 75% this year like they had early on. And here's the thing. If you don't push and manage for the lowest amount of growth possible before the investor says, look, if that's all it is, I'm out. And that's how you know if you're pushing down low enough. If your investor is just saying, okay, yeah, that's fine, we'll go. No, you should be pushing for lower growth when you're managing the expectations. And then you have the space to over deliver. So the messages I want people to hear if they're thinking about raising capital are, number one, make sure you've got a clear exit and timeline. And because that drives the expectations backwards. And then number two, each year when you sign up for your annual plan, you want that growth to be as low as possible. And it feels totally counter to every bone in your entrepreneurial body because you're like, no, I want to grow. We're going to do this. Like, I see this and this and this. That's fine. Have those conversations with your team. But when you go to your investor or your board, you make sure you push like crazy to have the lowest floor possible. And you'll know you've pushed enough if they start to get mad and say, hey, I think this might be the wrong investment for us. Okay, great. I think we just hit where we need to be. So if you don't get that right, which I didn't, you set yourself up for lots of problems, and you're not able to do what is the cardinal rule when you have investors: under promise and over deliver. That's the name of the game.
I love this, Clay. I mean, we've not really caught up on this, but my second book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, kind of the model that I outlined. It's funny how much I've changed in the time that we've known each other. But I've gone from growth to being the number one step in kind of the model is risk mitigation, right? So even though you didn't use that term, it's slightly different context. Effectively, setting the expectations is lowering your risk, because effectively, I know they're not doing it deliberately, right, but the investors are pushing for the growth, but they're giving you enough rope to hang yourself with, because you have unrealistic expectations. And well, you heard it here first, people, from a man that's raised an awful lot of money to help grow his company. So Clay, I've got two questions, but I'll ask them both because I want to be respectful of your time. I know we've got a hard stop. One is, how do you keep it fresh? Because again, there's been ups and downs, and you spoke a little bit about how you feel you feel that you're back on track. How do you keep it fresh? And then tied to that, and kind of vision, I'm curious, where do you see yourself, Clate, in 5 years? What does the vision look like now for you?
Yeah. So the way you keep it fresh is you stay connected to your customers, your partners, your employee. You keep the people aspect of it. That's what stokes the passion. And so I've always said, our passion drives our purpose. And as you know, our purpose, values, mission are the foundation of the company. Well, that purpose is born out of our passion. And the passion comes from the interaction with the people, your employees, your partners, your customers, seeing the way that you're changing their lives and using the business to build people. And that's what I love. I'm a huge fan of this quote. Most companies, this is a quote from the Johnsonville CEO. I read it in a book recently called Trust and Inspire by Stephen Covey.
Stephen Covey, great book.
Yeah, most companies use people to build their business. At Johnsonville, we use our business to build our people. And that is I'm just a huge believer. As you know, I'm a conscious capitalist. I believe that business is about lifting and building and inspiring everybody that's a part of it, and enriching everybody that's a part of it, from employees to partners to customers to shareholders to the community. And that brings me a ton of fulfillment and passion and excitement to see that when an employee grows, when a customer is growing their business, when a partner is thriving as they serve our mutual customers. And so that's how you keep it fresh. That's how the passion stays, burning bright, and how the purpose, values, and mission continue to drive and propel this company forward. So that's the first question. The second question is, in 5 years, I see myself as the chairman of the company. Maybe or maybe not the CEO still at that point. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I love this company. I don't see myself going anywhere. I'm not going to go start something else or do something else, but I might move into a chairman role by that point. I just turned 50. I love what we do. I'm setting this company up for long-term success that long outlives me. That's always been part of my vision and purpose, values, and mission. But I'm not going away anytime soon either. And I expect that at some point I'll move into a chairman role.
I love it. And Clate, I've loved this interview. If people want to find out more about you, what's the best place to go? Is it over to keap.com or any other resources, or Conquer the Chaos, a classic book available where all good books are, where you can purchase all good books. How do people get in touch?
Yeah, keap.com is the best way. I'm actually in the early process early stages of a revised edition of Conquer the Chaos. So that's a lot of fun. That'll be coming out probably next spring, something like that. So keap.com is the place. There's all kinds of resources there. We've got educational resources, free resources, a trial if people want to do that. Blogs. By the way, getting ready to refresh our podcast, so I'll probably ask you to come join me on that podcast sometime. Let me finish with this though, because we started with it, and I want to end on it. To me, family has always been integral to our business, and it's true that there are times where it feels like, how can I do both? But I just want to say you can absolutely do both, and in fact, the family can make the business better, and the business can make the family better. And the way that I've tried to do that, and I make all kinds of mistakes, of course, but the way I've tried to do it is everywhere possible, kill two birds with one stone. If I'm going on a business trip, take a child with me. If I'm if I've got a something that's very important to my child and I'm out of town on a trip, I'll set up my team for success and I'll do a quick flight home and then right back out. I've done that so many times. I've had my son with me presenting to Bain Capital Ventures when we were raising our capital, so he could see what that looked like, and it got him excited to go to business school, and he just started business school 2 months ago. The experience was back in 2014, and it had that kind of an impact on him. I've got another son who works in our business. I've had a daughter who's worked in our business. I've had brothers who work in our business. A brother right now that works in our business. I just see that, and for heaven's sakes, I work with my brothers-in-law. So people who say don't mix family and business, I've never bought into that. I think business can make family better, and family can make business better. And you just have to be intentional about it. And so I just would say, look for ways where you can build your business and your family at the same time in the same activity. And the more you can do that, the more synergy you get as you work to grow both.
You know what, Clate, what a beautiful one to think of. What a beautiful note to end on. I will definitely spend some good time thinking on that as I reflect from this conversation. So Clate Mask, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be with you.
Wow, that was, I'd say that was probably one of the most personal interviews I've heard of him. So well done on you for pulling that out of him. Good, but what a great guy, right? Seriously.
Yep, you don't want moral hazard, right? So if you're going to do business, you can't do good business with bad people. But Clate is the extreme opposite of that. Like, if you're working with great people, it's almost hard to do bad business, bad deal. If you're dealing with people with high ethics, moral integrity, it's a solid foundation.
Did I ever tell you, by the way, this was long before he had gotten invested. This was still when he was in his early phase and they were building. Did I ever tell you that he flew me down to his headquarters because I had a problem with Infusionsoft. I was struggling with it, and he got word about that, and they put me on a plane and flew me down to the. Did I ever tell you this?
No.
Yeah. He put me on a plane, put me and Jasmine on a plane, flew us down so we can meet all of the executives and express our grievances, and then get some training on how to actually use the system. That's pretty impressive, my friend. Yeah, he's a good guy. All right.
I love that. But by the way, my horror story is in the earliest days, I had an opportunity to invest in round one, the first round of financing for Infusionsoft as it was back then, and I passed it up.
That's like an actor saying they turned down Indiana Jones or something. Well done, my friend. That's okay. You'll get the next one. Let's move on and let's talk about book of the week. Now, should we talk about the book of the week, actual book of the week, or should we talk about the books of the week previously that I've read and now I want to call you out on?
All right, bring it. Beat me up
right.
first, and then we'll tail out with the
nothing to beat up actually, but I will tell you. I've almost finished both of these. One is The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And then the other one is Boards That Lead, and I don't remember the name of the author.
Great book.
So interesting. Yes, I'm sure. I do agree. They're great books. I will tell you, man, I've struggled a lot with Chet's book. Here's what I want. Is he even alive or is he dead now? Because he strikes me as a guy who's pretty old. Yeah.
No, he
because
wasn't
that
old.
book,
He passed away because of cancer.
Oh, it's unfortunate. First off, falling in love with the guy, right? Through the book, no question. He seems like a great guy. I really wish, though, somebody would be able to make like a second edition, because that book is, I mean, it's got to be over 20 years old. Am I right? Easy.
Yeah, it must be about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he, just you can hear the way he's talking about the internet and stuff. So here's my beef with the book, or beef with him, even though I still did really enjoy it. I felt like there was way too many cliches, like the whole mine's like a parachute, only works if it's open, and you know me, I'm a bit of a speaker snob. So when I hear speakers lecturing and using the whole freaking starfish metaphor, it made a difference for that one, I just want to vomit. So there was a lot of that in the book, a lot of cliches. And because it was so dated, like I'm hearing things like he's talking about, buy a lighted pencil. They'll never buy a lighted pen and send that out. They'll never throw that away. And I'm like, I cannot tell you how many lighted pens I just throw right in the trash when people send those over to me. So I felt like some of this stuff was a little bit dated, and here's my positive side of it. First order principles in business, bro, he had them. I mean, it was, if nothing else, it was a really good reminder of things that I have forgotten to do. And so I did like it from that perspective. But really, my big critique was, I would just love to see a second edition come out. Maybe his son, if there's somebody in his legacy, could take over and give an update, because it's got gems. It's just, I felt it was a little bit dated.
So basically, I'm going to say your feedback is that a guy who's dead hasn't updated his book.
Yes, that's my complaint. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Cause I think you're spot on, right? Sometimes people read books. I remember that Cialdini, Influence.
Yes.
I rave about that book. Great book, classic book. And somebody went, I don't see how it applies to me, and that just blows my mind. Like people just take it literally rather than think laterally and say, well, how did these print? All right, this might have been done a social psychologist doing an experiment in a lab, but those principles apply directly to your business, and I guess that's what we're trying to do to translate here. So yeah, great principles, but maybe some updated examples might be helpful.
Exactly. I think that's the kind of thing I wanted to convey, is that you do have to listen for the underlying message and not get distracted by the techniques or the tactics, which are a little bit dated. The other book, Boards That Lead, this one I'm just going to throw a confession out for you. Okay, so I have my own mastermind that I run, not nearly as big and as massive as the ones that you do, but I've got a modest little mastermind that I do every month, and every month we have a book of the month. And I'm always very diligent on trying to come up with a great book that I think they're going to like, and I've read it. And I got to confess, and so this is just between you and I. If you're listening to this, just plug your ears and don't listen to this, especially if you're one of my clients. I was running a little bit behind, and I didn't plan for the book of the month. So I'm midstream in my mastermind, and I'm like, oh crap, I didn't select a book of the month yet. So out of the blue, I just go, but you know what? I trust my friend Dan. So I'm going to recommend Boards That Lead for my mastermind. And
I
I
want to know where
hadn't
this
read
is
it yet.
going.
Well, I
Okay.
hadn't read it though. I've always read the books and I hadn't read it. And so now I'm reading it and I'm just sitting there going, I don't know, because all of my and so here's the frame I need, because I do think there's some value and I need some help reframing this in case they come to me. It's so written for the large corporations that have a board of directors and how they replace their CEOs and how they respond and the dynamics at that level. I'm having a real hard time thinking, how does this apply to me? I don't have a board of directors. I have a board of advisors, not the same by any stretch. And I'm wondering, okay, at the end of this month, are they going to come back going, what the hell were you recommended this book for? None of us have boards of directors. We're the business owner. We're the CEO, the president, and everything. So I need help finding some kind of frame on how it's relevant to small business owners.
Great. Good question. It's ironic because we just spoke about this on the Chet Holmes example, right? It's for me, you're thinking about it too literally. In a nutshell, in a word, it's about leadership. Okay, because it's leadership and leverage. So if you think about what a board do, a board have an opportunity to influence the CEO. The CEO runs the company, but the board is leading it. And how do you deal with it? Because CEOs typically have strong egos. So if you're building a company, the ideal employee, Tova, is somebody that can run autonomously and do an epic job, actually do a better job than you, and grows the company. Otherwise, you're having to grow the company. If you want a self-managing company, you need really strong, good employees. And so, my view of strong leadership is not. I'm missing the right word. Is not kind of command and control type leadership where like you're dominant, but actually, and Clate just spoke about this in the interview, right? It's like, how do you empower those people? And then it becomes less about boss and or manager and kind of rank and file, and it becomes more about coaching. How do you coach? How do you inspire? How do you uplift people? And how do you guide them based upon principles? How do you guide the employees to make the right decisions and to think for themselves? It's not about board structure. I mean, it is literally about board structure, but one step removed, it's about how do you lead and grow and develop leaders within your own organization.
Yeah, that's good advice. So I'm gonna finish this book off. I've got about a third left to go. I'm gonna finish this off, really pushing myself then to think more laterally and less literally or vertically in that situation. So, which, by the way, interesting little segue that I just confessed that I hadn't read the book that I recommended for the book of the month of 2019, as we now get into the actual book of the week this week, which is a book which you have not read, and now you're having faith in me recommending this one, and the jury's out on this one. Do you want to introduce the book, or shall I?
I will introduce the book. I'm looking forward to reading it. The book of the week, great title, is called, you mentioned it in a previous podcast, is called Surrounded by Idiots.
Yes. Yeah. By the way, the best part of the book is the title, hands down. In fact, by the way, I looked up on it. He has a book called Surrounded by Narcissists, Surrounded by Psychopaths. So he's got, I think each one of these books reflects it. So let me tell you about the book, because I think we could have a good conversation and debate about this. I will tell you. So the book is about DISC. That's all it is. It's a detailed, comprehensive book about the DISC profiling system. I think it's the DISC profiling system, so they have like the red and the yellow and the green and the blue personalities, or whatever they are. So interesting. That's so funny how this kind of works itself out, because we didn't plan this, but I had to read that book with lateral thinking, not vertical as well, because I fundamentally, I've gotten to a point in my life where I detest personality profiling programs. I think they just pigeonhole people. They're unhealthy as a general rule. And this one I feel does that a lot. What are your thoughts about the DISC profiling system?
Well, interestingly, I would draw the same conclusion but attach a different meaning.
Okay.
In other words, DISC is probably the personality profiling system that I'm most familiar with. I'm familiar with a few Myers-Briggs, etc. But DISC is the one where, because a former business partner was very, very, very heavy on it. So I got to learn via proximity, indirectly from her, a lot about DISC. And but I'm not attached to which system people use. I think it can be helpful because it effectively teaches people to be more receptive. What's what I'm looking for? Have more sensory acuity. Yes, you're pigeonholing, and at a point that becomes unhealthy. But actually, it causes in your communications go, okay, let me figure out what might be going on for this person. And effectively, it's shorthand rules which say, oh, if they're this type, or they're dominant, or etc., or their high steadiness, it gives you shorthand rules with, okay, then these are tools that might be useful. So a different context over would be people in my close family, some are on the autistic spectrum, and they were nightmare as children until the parent learned skills that was like, actually, children on the spectrum, sometimes these can be a useful change of approach, but that wouldn't work with a child that's not on the spectrum. And I'm not claiming to know about that, so I can already feel perhaps some hatred online. But the point is, because the person's different, it's not about fairness. Isn't about treating everybody equally. It's responding appropriately, right? It's responding appropriately given the context, and that's where I think DISC and other personality profiling systems can be tremendously useful.
Yeah. And by the way, like people may be going, why is he recommending it if he didn't like it? It's not that I didn't like the book. I'm not a fan of personality profiling. What I did enjoy about this book is that I think he's taking that system and he's put it in almost the whole book is not case studies, but stories about people and examples. And it allows you to, like, when you're reading the book, you can go, I know somebody like that. I know somebody like that. And so it does help for you to identify those kind of archetypes. And that's why I think it's worthy of being a book of the week. Despite the fact that I'm not a huge fan of personality profiling, I liked it. It was not what I was expecting at all.
Reviews. It's got 5,800 reviews, an average of 4.5 stars. So, like, I want to be. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of people that resonate with this book, so I look forward to reading it.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. I mean, I did enjoy it. I had to get over as soon as I got into it, I was like, oh, this is just personality profiling. But I thought, no, I'm going to keep going, and I pushed through that, and I did enjoy it, and I think it does give some useful examples. The part that I think I struggle with is when they start going, well, that's a high blue with a low green. And I'm like, okay, well, then that's kind of saying that they aren't one of the four, right? Anytime you start mixing the things around. So it gets a little overly convenient, but I did really enjoy how it says, if you see this is how you communicate to that person and they're going to respond better. And that I can't argue it. Yeah.
Well, for me, Joe, this dials in with the Ray Dalio principle of find the smartest people who disagree with you. In other words, I'm not a fan of confirmation bias. I'm in favor of stretching myself and reading stuff that's I don't agree with an open mind, right? Which, by the way, sets up perfectly for the quote of the week this week.
Let's talk about the quote of the week, my friend. Yes, I love it.
So this is by the legendary Ray Bradbury, and so my namesake, but not a relative as far as I'm aware.
Sadly.
Who said you. Yeah, exactly. I wish I had some of his writing skills. So you don't have to burn books to destroy a culture. You just get people to stop reading them.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely love this. There's another quote that I'm paraphrasing slightly that says, those people that don't read have got no advantage over those who can't read.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know what that quote means to me is tying this back into corporate culture and small business, right? Is like one of the biggest challenges that small business owners face is developing a culture in their business. And the other thing they struggle with is developing policies and procedures. So we could take that and say the same is true in culture and companies. If you want to destroy a culture, don't have a policy and procedures, because that's how cultures are created. If you have something that your employees can read that says, this is how we care about people, this is how we treat people, this is how we concern ourselves, then they have a governing body by which they can develop that culture. And if they don't have it to read, it's a free fall with the culture. Yeah.
Right. And from my perspective, from a chunk size above, it's about education and communication, right? Like it's part of the discussion. So this is the Ray Bradbury quote is also, or another way of thinking about it is if people aren't reading it, if it's not, if we sit inside the echo chamber, right, we stay stuck with where we're at and we don't listen to each other, and that's uber toxic. Which, you know, ultimately, Topher, the theme for this entire podcast, of course, is if you want a better business, you need to be a better business owner. And so you've got to develop yourself, develop your skills, get educated, get talking to other business owners, and that's the only way to thrive.
Amen. You've just wrapped it up perfectly, my friend.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.